Hey everyone, it's Jenna Melanson from Canadian Beats Media, and I'm here with Joel Schwartz in Toronto, Ontario, for our first Inside the Industry interview of 2023. Welcome, Joel.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Jenna. It's an honor to be the first interview of 2023, and it's really great to be on Canadian Beats magazine. I think what you're doing is like an incredible resource for and support for Canadian artists, and I'm a fan, and I love what you're doing. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks. So, first, I want to talk about your business, which is production. How did you get started in this?
Yeah, great question. So I'm a music producer, which means I help take an artist, like take a concept, and turn it into a polished recording that's ready for commercial release. You know, something that sounds as good as the heroes' music, something that they really love. So that sounds simple enough, but my work is truly the culmination of many, many years in the music industry as a session player, as a composer, as an audio engineer, and now maybe something we'll talk about a bit later as a community founder and artist mentor. So let me take you through how I got there. So I started as a freelance guitar player. I went to music school and in Toronto here, and I was working with a huge range of artists and huge range of genres. I found eventually what I started being hired more and more for, and what I was just personally drawn to more and more is the constellation of genres that I'll say is like, roots, folk pop, blues. I see as sort of a singer-songwriter type genre. Um, and my path to becoming a producer was really like an organic one. I was playing on a lot of records, loving the recording process, and I would play like a bunch of different instruments. Things I play resonator and banjo and mandolin and a bunch of fretted instruments. And so my role, and I felt like my impact, was just organically shifting and kind of from a hired gun to really more of a creative collaborator. So at the same time as this was happening, this kind of evolution for me was happening, I also started writing a lot with artists. I invested in some gear, some recording gear. I opened this space here, which is in Toronto's West End, and artists started asking me to work with them as the title of producer. So really a gradual shift. And happily, like, the artists I've worked with have seen some real success, like, and this is like really the most gratifying part. Like, not only things like there's been Juno nominations, there's been awards, millions of streams, stuff like that, which is exciting. But there's excuse me, there's a real, in working with an artist as a producer, I've had the opportunity to have a big impact on their career, their career trajectory too. So it's amazing seeing an artist go from, where, say, I mean, people work with me in a lot of different capacities and depending on where they are, but going from, you know, uh, a humble beginning maybe to like playing festivals and having this huge transformation. So yeah, there's a huge range of people I work with. It's incredible to see the success, but mostly it's with, like I said, folk roots, kind of blues, um, Americana kind of stuff. So anyways, the last thing I'll tell you about, which is kind of what I'm doing now, is I'm offering to anyone, and this is not just my music production clients, but to anyone who is interested in this. It's an online artist membership. It's kind of like an incubator where we talk about all the things that are related to being a contemporary artist, but are just beyond the scope of music production. So we cover things like branding, marketing, creating a great website, EPK, networking with other artists, creating a community. There's so many things that contemporary artists need to know. Previously, this was just like a side conversation of the my production clients, that they would have questions about, like, okay, what do I do with this now, and how can I make the most of it. Now I've kind of like formalized it a bit more, and codified it. I bring in like regular interviews with industry experts. There's regular Zoom calls, and there's a real community of people who are interested in these sorts of questions. So that's That's a brief or not maybe not so brief
Oh,
introduction to all the things.
very informative. Um, on your website, you mentioned, you offer various resources for artists. One resource that stuck out to me was the home recording checklist. How did you come up with this idea?
Yeah, so I created this home recording checklist really during the pandemic because suddenly singer-songwriters were having to figure out how to record themselves. They couldn't go into a studio because everything was shut down. And so they had to like make the most of the gear they had or buy some gear. And most artists were not used to handling this part of things. I think it's getting more common now, but there were a lot of artists that weren't used to that. So I created this checklist as a brief guide that really walks you through, all the technical parts of recording and recording yourself at a professional level. My goal is really to empower artists to make their best art and, wherever they are in their career and wherever they might be in the world. So this is something that I was able to use as a resource to help artists when I was working with them remotely.
When it comes to the checklist, what sort of things does it include?
Yeah, sure. So there's three parts of this the checklist. So the first part covers everything you need to know to set up your DAW, which is recording software. This includes things like sample rate, bit depth, enabling direct monitoring, setting up your interface, using a click track, stuff like that. Um, the second part covers more the actual recording. So this is stuff like setting the popper level so you're and gain staging so you're not distorting and you're recording at the best possible, getting the best quality of sound. Leaving silence at the beginning and end of your recording, how to approach recording takes, stuff like that. The third section is all about like exporting the track. So file versioning, file naming, staying organized, mono versus stereo. Again, a lot of technical information. And like, if you don't have a guide through this, it's like, it's easy to mess up and it creates problems down the line. So I just created a checklist with the most common questions and tried to be as helpful as possible to people and just offered that during the pandemic as just a free download that people can print out and use. And yeah, and there's a video guide too for people who want to go in a little more depth that just walks them through that. But yeah, it's all free.
On top of that, you also have the Facebook group, the Studio Songwriters Community, which is a place for artists to discuss writing, recording, production, touring, etc. Can anyone join this? Is this the one you were talking of earlier?
Yeah, so the Studio Songwriter group is like a free Facebook group that I made just to like have like what I found on Facebook was there are a lot of songwriter groups, like artist groups on Facebook. But what I found was like they weren't really curated or led very well. And I found there was like a ton of spam. People were just posting links to their own releases. And there wasn't like really high quality conversations about the things you're talking about, like production, touring, recording, career development, stuff like that. So I wanted to make something that was like really high quality. I started it in October, so it's still quite young, still new. Um, so anyone can join this, and I encourage anyone who is a songwriter to join. There are a lot of really smart and very like A-level artists and songwriters in there who post from time to time. This is everything from kind of philosophical questions about why they make music to very practical, how to collaborate with other musicians, marketing questions, stuff like that. I also bring in special guests from time to time. So this group is free, and it's different from this other group, which is called the Artist Circle, which is really focused. This is for people, it's about the cost of a gym membership or a professional guitar lesson, but this is for people who are like really focused. They're interested in developing their career, they're developing themselves. So there's a lot more time with me. There's special guests. Is way more kind of involvement. But if you're not sure what to do, I would say get this recording checklist and join the Studio Songwriter Facebook. There's no that way you kind of come into my world a little bit, you get to know me a little bit, and if you wanted to take the next step of working with me as a producer or being part of this artist circle, you could ask me some questions or just kind of get a better understanding of what I'm doing.
Awesome. Okay. If someone's looking to work with you, what should they have prepared in advance?
Yeah, so to work with me as a producer, I would say like really what they need, an artist needs, is a song that they believe in and the ability to sing it. It's really as
Oh,
simple as that.
that's pretty
From
simple.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of other things besides that that are going to be expanded, like in terms of what their goals are and what they want to do, and we can get into all that. But like at its core, you have to have something that you believe in. You have to have some song that you believe in, that you love, that you feel you feel okay with, and to be able the ability to sing it, and then we can take care of the rest. So everyone is obviously at different stages of their career. I work with people who are aspiring artists, who are just getting started, who are really talented but don't have a lot of experience in the industry, all the way to mid-career artists who are like they've released 5 records and they're looking to work with me because of the particular sound that I offer. So there's it really, what an artist needs to be prepared. It really depends kind of more on more broadly on what sort of stage they're at. But I think at the basic level, it's that a song or a bunch of songs you love, you believe in, and can sing.
What 3 tips would you pass on to an upcoming artist or band on how to begin songwriting, recording, and production?
Okay, here are my biggest tips. You got to listen as much as possible to other people's music, other artists' music that you love, and try to break it down. What are the elements of that music that inspire you? So take songwriting, for example, chord progressions, melody, vocal tone, rhythm. Like, what are the elements of that song that you love? And really try to understand that. Structure, like how's the form of the song? Um, and similarly for production, break it down. What's the instrumentation, the orchestration, the panning, the like wet versus dry. So that means how much reverb or how kind of close the sound feels. And as you learn about this stuff, you get to name these things, and you get to start to recognize these things in other songs, in other productions, and you're able to talk about them and articulate them. And again, this is like a big part of some of the work I do in the artist circle. But that would be my recommendation, is like really listen critically and break down the elements.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the listeners?
I have huge empathy for anybody making art right now. There's enormous challenges as an artist right now. The landscape is changing so much, and artists are so important to society. I believe in art. I believe in music. I believe in the power. I've experienced that power myself. And my goal as a producer is to really help artists, make turn their art into something like the best it can be, really. So I have enormous empathy for artists doing this. I think, again, there's enormous opportunities, but we have to kind of think differently and do things a little bit differently than we have in the past. And artists can really benefit from a guide through that process. So that's my closing thought.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me on this.
Well, thank you for having me, Jenna. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to connecting with anybody who's interested. They can come to my website, which is joelschwartz.ca, and there's if they want to start a conversation or ask me anything, they're welcome to.